those of you who've seen my TED Talk or have heard just the clip of it that we shared, I don't very often talk about the chronology of the events that happened on June 11th, 2003, when I made my mistake to try to end my life, but failed. The times I do talk about it are where I know that either the people are ready to have that conversation, or the narrative will help them in what it is that they are working with. And so just briefly, I'm going to give you a little bit of the backstory beyond the 4-minute TED Talk. Because that night, it's awesome to be talking about it here, literally less than a mile away from where my life was saved. Through the quick action of emergency response folks, people at Bellevue Hospital, nurses and doctors, people who were more committed to saving my life than I was committed to living it. Worked quickly to put things together in a way that they could put me back and put me at the threshold of life itself. But that's all they could do, because I actually had to be the one who stepped over the threshold. I had to find the resources and the support and the information that was hard to find for people who made a mistake of making a suicide attempt and they were trying to put things back together. But there were a few key people who made this possible. One of whom was a nurse, and I wish I knew her name and I wish I could find her today. She was one of the nurses at Bellevue, and she did not put up with my shit at all. She called it like it was. She was not afraid to talk about suicide. Let's put it that way. And one day I remember she brought in the New York Post article that had run about the attempt that I had made, because my family had been shielding me from the media about this whole adventure. And she laid it on my bed, and I looked at the headline, and it said, "Deranged middle-aged man survives jump." And I thought, middle-aged? Really? Is that what that is? She was only one of many people who helped me in this process. The second one I want to briefly acknowledge is a guy named Roger. Roger was one of the people I met early in recovery here in New York City. And he helped me understand that I had to define surrender differently. I had to surrender to my addiction, and I had to surrender to my depression. And he said, "JD, that's not waving a white flag. That's not quitting. That's not throwing the towel in. When you surrender, you go over to the winning side. In fact, you not only go over to those who are winning, you put yourself in the care of the winners." And early in recovery, right after I came back to my senses and my will to live came back, I had to do that. I couldn't do it in my own energy. I had to trust those of you who were winning. And then life got better. I fell in love to an amazing guy named Ken. We moved to California. We got married. I started teaching at another university. I was psyched about what was going on in my life, and I got complacent. And then I went to TED in 2010, and another person changed my life. Lena Schramm. She did a 3-minute speech at TED that year, and her speech was about her struggle with a brain tumor. And I remember it so clearly because she ended her speech saying, "In 3 years, I will be gone. Where will you be?" And that question sunk right here. And I wrote in my journal, when will I tell my truth? When will I start talking about the miracle that happened in my life? Maybe next year, question mark. Be careful what you say to the universe. Because sure enough, 1 year later, I was on the stage at TED with my own 3-minute, okay, I went 4 minutes and 20 seconds, that's why I had a timer up here tonight. But I had my own 4 minutes where I could tell my story. Now, those of you who've seen the talk, there's a paragraph, and part of it was excerpted in what we shared a moment ago. There's a part that begins, I know John's story well because I'm John. What you don't know is that I didn't have to give that paragraph. I wrote the speech not knowing if when I actually got to the stage at TED, if I would have the guts to acknowledge that it was my own story. And I trusted the audience, and I stepped forward, and I said that line, and it was the right thing to do, because it made the talk better. And much like Kevin's talk, it has been seen about. Okay, not as much as Kevin's talk, but it has been seen about 500,000 times. Been translated into 39 languages, and I am overwhelmed every week when I hear from people that the talk touched them, and that it made a difference. In fact, I'm to the point now, I can handle the email replies, I can't handle all the posts and all the messages and all the message boards. But I realized by me stepping out of my fear of silence, I enabled a lot of other people to have a conversation and to talk. And then I became complacent again. And earlier this year, I remember saying to my husband, I have a great life. I really should be doing more around suicide prevention. I really should be doing the work that people are doing, which is remarkable. Be careful what you tell the universe. Shortly after that, TED contacted me and they said, the Huffington Post wants to put you and 4 other suicide experts. Okay, I'm a lucky man. I'm not an expert on suicide. Maybe I jumped off too short of a bridge, I'm not sure. But they wanted to put us in the Huffington Post on Memorial Day weekend. And then shortly after that, Upworthy picked up the video, and they promoted the video. It played in several places. And through that, it was seen by folks like Stephanie Kaufman, who's here tonight as one of my guests. She's a freshman at Brown. She started an organization when she was a high school student called Let's End the Stigma, Project Let's. And people like that started reaching out to me, including Tim. And so I am again coming out of a totally different closet and having a conversation with a bunch of people that many of whom I know and most of whom I do not, because this silence has to end. We have to get to a place where we do not tolerate people being silent about suicide. A few years ago, I lost another student at Stanford, one of my PhD students, and the university did not talk about how he died. Now, I understand that his family had privacy issues and they had their own shame and their concern, but my students needed to talk about it. They needed to have those conversations. Because of my TED Talk, one by one, they found their way to my office, and we could begin to talk through these issues. So for my part, my commitment tonight is twofold. One, my husband and I are trying to adopt a child in the next year. And we so much want to raise that little girl or that little boy in a world that won't tolerate silence about suicide. And that's what we're committed to. And so within the next year, I will write and publish my story so that it can reach people beyond what is possible on the internet. And I will share my story in a way that hopefully more people can begin to stop the silence. But much like Glenna asked me at TED, I ask you, what will you do? Tonight can't just be one more great New York gala that we go to and we dress up and we bid on some things and we have some dances and we have a great time. It has to be a catalyst for all of us to take steps. Because silence about suicide sucks, and it needs to stop.